Just that startup conversation during the week, and joining me in studio to just have that conversation with me to my immediate right is Mark Bichachi. Next to him is Kevin Osido, and the far right, last but not least, is Bernard Wakoli. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for coming in here. All right, but before we start the conversation, I want us to listen to acting Cabinet Secretary of Education Fred Matiang'i on head transfers.
There is something we have done in the education sector that has failed us. It's time to do it differently so that we move around the country. If you are a school principal, I don't understand why a principal from Siaya cannot be principal in Kiambu. I don't understand why a teacher from Loitoktok cannot be a principal in Kisumu. My good people, let me speak more bluntly like the prophets of old. The foolishness with which we have lived must come to an end. And then we must be honest with one another and do the things that are good for our country. We should stop lying to each other. We have been trained to go and teach. Let's go and work and serve our children. Serve all these children God has given us, wherever we serve them.
All right, this issue of headmasters transfers from one place to another has caused quite a stir, in all over Kenya. Like yesterday, we saw 5 county politicians being arrested just because they were against some of the head teachers that were brought into the county. What are your thoughts on this? I'll start with you.
There are two perspectives to this particular discussion, and the first perspective is why are the head teachers being moved around. Number one, if you want to standardize education across the country, then you've got to rotate the teachers so that the level of education throughout the country is the same standard, so that you are able to build a culture of education that is the same across the country. You're able to improve performance across the country, and most importantly, you have to be able to deal with the cartels, which unfortunately most of the head teachers and the politicians in most of our counties are part of. And this is what I mean. There's a particular constituency in this country, I will not name it, where every time schools were delivered books were delivered to a school, the watchmen would die at night because thugs would come. Simply because the teachers had a deal with the cartels that every time the books were delivered, you kill the watchman, you steal the books, and then you take those books to another school where that cycle is repeated. So when you see these politicians refusing for head teachers to be moved, you understand that schools are big business. They're big business because you've got books. They're big business because you've got the food cycle. They're big business because you've got the uniform cycle. And these cartels are very keen to keep certain headmasters in certain places to ensure that the flow of money that they've received continues. There is no good reason why a civil servant cannot be moved around by his employer, who's the central government of Kenya, because when you sign up as a civil servant, you sign up to serve the people of Kenya at the behest of the government. The government has a right to send you to whichever place it has institutions to work from. Right. But all you're seeing is the activity of cartels in cahoots with some politicians to try and keep the good cabinet secretary from being able to transform our education sector as he has done for the last 5 years of our existence.
All right, Kevin, do you share the same sentiments?
Yes and no, but let me just speak out what I think. Right?
Yes.
I think it's a good step forward insofar as enhancing cohesion and integration in this country is concerned. But insofar as standardization of education is concerned, it has nothing, in my view, to do with the head teachers, because a school is a system that runs right from the head teacher to the watchman at the gate to the cooks at the kitchen, and all this, in my view, is about the policy that the government has set through the Ministry of Education. What exactly are we aiming at? What is the problem? What is the issue we are trying to address? And is this the best way to address it? And why I'm saying this is because, for instance, during Christmas, as I've always said, I had discussions with some of these head teachers that are being transferred. And one of the things that how the people out there look at it is because more or less the background is from the release of the KCSE results that we also know that had serious issues, and various stakeholders were calling for audits and all that. And if you do an analysis of many of the schools that have been affected, indeed there are schools that were also mentioned during the process of the release of the results. And if we are going to link the results release and performance of schools with the transfer of principles, then I think there are certain points which we are losing. And that is why I said that the school runs as a unit. It runs as a system of different aspects that therefore need to be taken into account. Okay. Because the principal is also a motivator of teachers. The principal is also a motivator of the students. And we will be looking forward to see how these schools are going to perform, because therefore you note that, for instance, the governor of Bungoma County said that if you are coming from a school which is a non-performer, there is no way we are going to allow you to bring in your low performance in our county. So yes, there are those concerns of people are looking at investment, people are looking at our image and profile as a county and the county schools vis-a-vis national and other schools within the same purview. People are also looking at the future of these young people who are the students, and the person who is supposed to drive this motivating factor is more or less like the pilot, the driver, the doctor of this hospital, who is the principal. So in my view, I agree with the CS to the extent that we are seeking to enhance cohesion, integration in the country, and I heard him say that from the soundbite. But I don't think for schools, regardless of whether national, county, or rural schools, or town schools, urban schools, I don't think cohesion at this point should be the issue. We should look at schools as a holistic aspect. Then the third thing is, the story that you ran is about parents struggling to pay school fees for their kids.
Yes.
Communication and investment in education. And that is why we keep asking the ministry to consider that stakeholders are included, so that this is a process that is owned by the people. The private sector within those counties, therefore, are given opportunities to invest in schools. Religious institutions that also sponsor these schools are given opportunities to even provide a soft landing for some of these kids who cannot be able to pay school fees. But again, note that these stakeholders should be able to have a say in, for instance, who becomes a principal. And through that, then you have goodwill, you have buy-in, you have more or less like a platform within which people can be able to dialogue, people can be able to present their sentiments, and then you have the system running in a manner that is sustainable. Because what we are seeing, my dear friend, is we'll keep having politics interfering with education.
Bichachi, you seem like you want to, but let's just give Bernard a chance first.
Thank you very much, Ashir, for having us here on studio. I think Kevin and my friend Mark have covered almost everything, but I just want to add and remind the county governments and county leaders that education is not a devolved function, and it's a responsibility of the national government. So if we see county government interfering with the education system of most of the schools, with the perception that those teachers who have been transferred there or head teachers are not performing, then we are starting this on a very wrong footing. We need everybody to take their responsibilities. County governments or MCAs have responsibilities of ensuring that the counties are performing, of ensuring that the resources that are within the counties are utilized well for the betterment of the communities. But when we see MCAs leading demonstrations of locals to evict head teachers from the offices, then as a country we are losing it very big, and I think the government should move in very swiftly with the security agencies to arrest and prosecute those MCAs that were involved in those kind of acts of human rights violation. One thing I would like to talk about is what Kevin said about consultations. You know, as he was talking, I imagined how county or our education system or education officers can start organizing forums and asking locals, which person do you want to be a head teacher in this school?
Yes.
And you know, consultations are good, but to some extent, I think the Minister of Education has the responsibility to ensure that there's free movement of teachers and civil servants per se, so that we don't have somebody staying in one station for over 10 years. And if that person stays for that long, what Mark said, that the increase now cartels, there's so much corruption in those schools. And what we are seeing demonstrations is like the beneficiaries of those cartels are being hit hard. So that's why we see those kind of
Mark, I know you
actions.
want to respond to them, but before we do that, let's just listen to Wangamati on transfers.
What we were interested in as Bungoma County is to ensure that our schools are managed by people who have the capability to manage those schools. And I remember when I was meeting this official, I told him I want to know the main scope of these principles, where they have come from, compared to where they're landing in Bungoma County. And when you look at the numbers, they don't add up. And I want to say here, I'm a very objective person. And I want to tell my friends who are coming to Lugulu, and that one who is going into Kamsinga and Kibabi, here I think hajakuja. But those one, my friend who is here, please, after this, we kuja tuongee, because we will not allow you to sit in that school. We cannot have a situation where your main score is about 5.9 and you're going to a school where main score is 9. Hata kama wewe ni mwalimu umeletwa, my friend uko hapa, tafadhali just tell them, kwa unyenyekevu, just go back and look for another school.
But does that mean that just because you come from a school with 4.0 mean score, you cannot deliver at a national school?
You know, I'm quite tickled by this. Number one, you want to tell me that certain counties deserve 4.9 mean grade and others only deserve 9. That's number one. Number two, why aren't we discussing about the transfer of doctors? Why are we not discussing the transfer of county commissioners?
Or even teachers.
About teachers themselves. The reality of the matter is, as a country, we need to wake up to certain realities. Number one, a lot pre-Matiang'i years, the reason why when you transferred a principal, the grades also changed was because of the exam cartels. And we know this to be a fact.
Yes.
Okay? Now, we've been through a process where we're transforming education in this country. How education should be in this country is it should not matter who is principal. Because let's not forget that the governor should be aware that the Ministry of Education has people who are in charge of making sure that schools meet the required standards set by law and by the ministry. Okay? They're called education officers who go into classes and into schools to make sure these standards are met. Why are we trying to demonstrate against a process that is legally available for him to pursue? Number two, the reasons why certain schools underperform is not necessarily because of the principals. There are schools that are under-resourced in terms of laboratories, in terms of classrooms. There are schools that have oversubscription by students, where you have the student-to-teacher ratio being larger than what is required. And in that school, you do not expect that the children will perform as well as a school that is well-resourced, that has a healthy student-to-teacher ratio. And when you consider all these facts, we need to understand as a nation, there's no part of this nation that deserves a 4.9 mean grade and the other one that deserves 9.
Right.
If you're going to do the country a favor, take the guy who got 9 mean grade, take him to a school that took 4 so that he can improve it. Take this guy who took 4 into a culture that produces 9 so you can also improve him. This is how systems work.
All right. Kevin, you disagree?
Not necessarily, but we are actually saying the same things, but probably using different words. Because when you talk about, he's talking about laboratories. I just talked about investing in education.
Yes.
So that you have stakeholders owning this process, and that is what I meant by consultation. Because people cannot get involved into a process that they do not understand.
All right.
And part of that involvement, he just spoke about education officers, and I spoke about education stakeholders. In schools, and the quality assurance and standards officers sit here at the Jogo House, House A. These are people who go to the counties and they engage with the people who sit at the counties. They have information. The ministry and other stakeholders need to use that information to make the schools better. So that if the principal from Lenana is taken to Nyabururu in Kisi, we should not be seeing people from Kisi demonstrating, because they'll be able to know that the same curriculum that is being used at Lenana or whatever school is the same one that we are coming to use here. Number one. Number two is that the same standards that the ministry is using in whichever school, national or county or whatever, is the same standards that are also going to apply to us here. But what we are seeing here is a situation where people, and in fact, I liked what the parents were saying. You note that there are certain gaps within which communication is being sent to various stakeholders. And by this, I mean the pupils, I mean the teachers, I mean the parents, among others. If that communication is not synchronized effectively, I am afraid that we are going to see political interference affecting our education system. He mentioned education being devolved. Education is a shared function as per Schedule 4. And ECDs, counties are supposed to give resources to ECDs. And that is the background within which a student who wants to be an A scorer begins the process of knowing how to read and write my name and say Abba, Chada, Efa, Gafa, all those things. If county governments do not invest in ECDs, we're not going to have this beautiful national school.
But then why take it out on the teachers? I mean, we're seeing parents attacking teachers. It's not the fault of the head teachers. They're just following, the commands that they're given.
I think actually a school per se is a collective responsibility. The performance of a school does not entirely, as my colleagues have said, on head teachers. This is a head teacher is just like a manager who is managing resources and managing the affairs of the school. But it involves teachers, it involves parents, the community, and the key stakeholders. So if all these people are not involved in the management of the school, then we can't have good performance. As in, if the teachers are not motivated enough to complete syllabus on time, students will not perform. And if parents are not willing to cooperate with the school management, especially the BOG, the school will not perform. So as much as we are trying to attack teachers and attack the principles of poor performance of some of these schools, we also need to put in mind that those schools can easily perform very well, can release or can post very positive results if we have a partnership, a collaboration between all the key stakeholders. Having said that, there's this responsibility of the county government of health, which is actually at its lowest. But we see now county governments moving in and talking about the shared responsibility, which is not part of their responsibility of high school education, when their own responsibility of ensuring that resources are available for health facilities are not, the health performance is very poor in these counties.
Right.
Nurses are not paid, doctors are crying all over. So we need a country that respects responsibilities and roles, because they are cut out in the constitution. And instead of attacking a head teacher, a principal who has been moved to that school, let's see governors talking about how they are going to improve local health facilities in their counties, how people are going to access health, how infrastructure is going to improve, other than seeing all these wrangles. And as I've said, those MCAs who participated or who have been involved in the eviction of principals, I think the security agency should move in and arrest those people.
All right.
It was very barbaric. It was dehumanizing to see a head teacher being moved before parents, before pupils, the students. How do you expect those children to respect this principle after being humiliated like that by the so-called MCAs?
All right, we want to take a short break here on Morning Express, but when we come back, we're going to take a look at the head teacher's reaction towards the transfers. Don't go too far.